right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today, we are going to be continuing along the path of the dancer. Now, if you're trying to figure out dancer, I don't remember that class from D&D 5th edition. Well, that's because this entire series I've been doing for the past couple months here now, I'm going over the 5th edition D&D Cross Final Fantasy for 14 Classes and Races Compendium. Which, if you don't know what it is a fan-made thing that basically takes all the clicker classes from Final Fantasy 14, translates them into D&D 5th edition. In the description, there's actually a thing that says, get it here. Click that link, it'll take you right to the Reddit. The pinned post there actually has links to the most current version and all previous versions. So definitely check that out. As a quick reminder, if you're enjoying this content, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon to turn notifications on. All of those things help these videos to get seen by other people. So please do that. So let's dive back into us. Now, quick reminder on 5th edition class design. In 5th edition, every single class is designed to play very, very differently right from the beginning. In order to do that, each class has these things that we call defining features. These are either abilities that are unique to the class, or other classes may get them, but this class gets them earlier, or has a special way that they can use them that the other classes can't. In order for something to be considered a defining feature, it has to show up within the first 2 levels. Now, the dancer, my last video, we covered the dancer, and it didn't work. Basically, it had a bunch of things taken directly from the rogue, just kind of shoved in there. It also was a half caster, but it could also cast spells all the way up to about level 7 using this weird dice rolling thing. And then it also had barbarians unarmored, did defense, and it was really, really complicated. It didn't work at all. So we made some modifications, and basically the new defining features for the dancer are effectively 2, with a third one that's just kind of a way for them to fight a little differently. The first defining feature is Dazzling Dance, which I have I respectfully ask Soren to rename because it's really hard to say that with a stutter. But basically, every time you take the attack action, you get a Dazzling Dance charge. You can have a number of those stored up equal to your charisma modifier. When you get it at first level, as a bonus action, you can burn a charge to dash or disengage. And then as the class goes on, you get more things that you can do with them. But that's kind of the big thing for the dancers, these Dazzling Dance charges. Now, the second defining feature is called Whirling Steel, which is basically if they use a finesse weapon, or if they throw a finesse weapon, so they have a finesse weapon with the throwing property, they can actually spend an hour attuning to up to 2 weapons like that, so that anytime they throw them, they will come back. And because chakrams are not a thing in D&D 5th edition, they do give an example of how you could make a chakram on what it would be. And it's basically just take the hand axe stat block and add the finesse quality to the weapon, and then you have chakrams, which works perfectly. It's a great way to custom craft in something really, really simple and easy. So Whirling Steer effectively means they can use throwing weapons as range weapons, which if they're using chakrams, which to be blunt, they really should be, because it's just, that's what the class is built around, and it's super cool. So yeah, I like Juju chakrams for the class. That means they have a short range of 20 feet and a long range of 60 feet. So that's a lot of fun. And with that extra mobility means they can do quite a bit of stuff. Then we added one more defining feature, which for the life of me, I can't actually remember what it was called. I'm going to look it up real quick here. Come on. I think it's closed position or something like that. I named it after the actual action that they use, and for the life of me, I don't know why they call it closed position, because it's dance partner. Yeah, closed position. So we added another defining feature, which was closed position, which was as a bonus action. You can declare someone your dance partner for a minute, and as your dance partner, anytime you burn a dazzling dance charge, they actually get advantage on any creatures you attack within the round previously, effectively. So anyone you attack within the round before your dance partner comes up, they have advantage on their first attack roll. And so they, with those changes, we kind of changed it into kind of a support, almost control style class instead of just a pure, I don't know. I think it was supposed to be DPS, but it was really confusing as to far as what it was supposed to be. So, yeah. So that's the changes we made, or I made to it. Now we're going to cover the Paragon. Now, the interesting thing about the Paragon, I'm going to actually read the description because it's going to influence my suggestions on how to make this work, because with the changes that I suggested for the base class, Paragon doesn't work at all because it's all about spellcasting. And we ditched the spellcasting for this. So this is what it says for the Paragon. You devoted your training to dance as an art form itself. Staying a purist of the dance, your singular focus will allow you to reach mastery if you ever hope to achieve in your discipline. So effectively, the Paragon is supposed to be focused on movement and dance, which for the regular dancer translates into spellcasting for some odd reason. Remember, the unchanged dancer, the former dancer, the artist formerly known as dancer, they had this thing called dance magic, which was basically, instead of verbal components, you have to spend 10 feet of movement to cast a spell that has verbal components. And if you're concentrating on a spell, you have to spend 10 feet of movement to continue concentrating on it. So movement is part of their spellcasting. So that's why Paragon mentions the whole dancing and focusing on movement, because it's going to focus on accenting its spellcasting. Now, I'm going to go through the subclass as it's written and talk about how it would work if the dancer still worked that way. And then when I go final thoughts, I'm going to talk about how I would change it so it works with our new dancer. And I think the new version I think is really cool. But yeah, I'll leave you guys to decide that. So first thing you get at the third level is Inspiring Salsa. As a bonus action, you can spend up to 2 Dazzling Dance charges to excuse me. Wow, that went down the wrong tube. Sorry. I have no idea what just happened, but it was unpleasant. So, as a bonus action, you can spend up to 2 Dazzling Dance charges to inspire an ally within 5 feet of you. Your ally may add a bonus to any attack roll, saving throw, or ability check they make equal to twice the number of charges used to inspire them one time. At 10th level, you may spend any number of Dazzling Dance charges in the same way. So effectively, this is kind of like a Bard inspiration without rolling. Basically, instead of having to roll for inspiration, like the way Bards do it, is they would give an inspiration die, which could be anything from a D6 up to a D12, depending on the level of the bard. And then when someone was to make a check, they could just roll it. This is much flatter. Basically, for every dazzling dance charge you spend, they get double that to a bonus. So you spend 1 charge, they get a +2. You spend 2 charges, they get a +4. And then at 10th level, you can spend 3, 4, or 5. So theoretically, if you had 5 dazzling dance charges saved up, you could give someone a +10 on an attack roll. Now, an issue with this is it doesn't actually say how long that lasts. It just says your ally may add a bonus to any attack roll, saving throw, or ability check they make equal to twice the number of charges used to inspire them 1 time. So it does say that it can only happen 1 time, but it doesn't actually say when that ends. So theoretically, with Inspiring Salsa, at the end of every single combat, if the dancer had any charges left, they would instantly use Inspiring Salsa, so that everyone would just be walking, or someone would be just walking around with a +2 or a +4 or +6 or whatever to their next to a roll sometime. So bare minimum, there needs to be a limit as to how long Inspiring Salsa lasts. Because the Dazzling Dance charges only happen when you take the attack action, it does mean that using them outside of combat is a lot more difficult, but could still very easily be kind of manipulated. Yeah, there needs to be a time limit, like 1 minute or 10 minutes or something like that. Since it's technically an in-combat ability, 1 minute would make sense. But there are so many uses for Inspiring Salsa outside of combat, simply because even just a +2 is really useful. I would say probably saying, if you were to keep this base class, I would say 10 minutes could make sense as well. It really depends on whether it was intended to be just a combat ability, or was it was intended to have out of combat uses. So other than that, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's going to run into issues as this goes on, because in order to build Dazzling Dance charges, you need to take the attack action. As I already mentioned, this is a spellcasting focused build. So it's going to really, really emphasize you casting spells, which normally is a little bit harder for a half caster, but we're going to find out something more interesting in just a second here about how that doesn't really matter. And spell slots don't matter for this. Yeah. It's an interesting ability. It doesn't really fit with this subclass, simply because this subclass is designed to be casting spells a lot, and yeah, this requires you to take the attack action a lot in order to actually be able to use it. Yeah, so going to 6th level, you get Magic of Movement. When you cast a spell, you may spend a number of Dazzling Dance charges equal to the spell level instead of spending the spell slot. Spells cast using this feature do not generate Dazzling Dance charges. So, at 14th level, you get this thing called Spell Dancer, which effectively means every time you cast a spell, you gain Dazzling Dance charges. At 6th level, so long before that, you can actually burn Dazzling Dance charges to cast your spells. Meaning, spell slots are a limiting factor. They are a limited resource. Not really for the dancer. The dancer is always going to have spell slots because it takes a single attack action to get a 1st level spell slot, 2 attack actions to get a 2nd level spell slot, and there are so many weird things about this, because generally you need to use your action to cast spells, but you also need to use your action to generate dazzling dance charges. So now, and also inspiring salsa is a really useful use for your dazzling dance charges, but so is being able to cast spells, which is what this entire thing is built around. So you have all this kind of contradicting the things where now they're giving you far more uses for your dazzling dance charges than you will ever be able to use, and you're going to be fighting with yourself as well, which is going to be the least bad way for me to use these. Generally, being able to cast a spell is going to be more useful than being able to inspire an ally sometime. So it kind of gets rid of inspiring salsa, which, being the third level of ability of this, should be kind of the defining feature. The other thing that's interesting about this is most other uses for your dazzling dance charges use one. Both of these, you can effectively use all of your charges at once to do things. So yeah, this effectively turns the dancer into, they will spend a couple of turns building up their dazzling dance charges so they can cast a spell. Now, one thing is, it is interesting, if you were still using the base version of that class, they do, I actually looked at the spell list, and it looks like a cleric spell list. Like, there's a lot of healing spells. Like this, looking at this as a spell list, it makes it seem like the dancer was meant to be a healer. And taking the Paragon, this definitely could turn into a healer, because you could take the attack action, get your charge, and then cast Healing Word as your bonus action every turn. You would never run out of healing words, because every turn, it's a first level spell. Every turn you'd attack, Healing Word, attack, Healing Word, attack, Healing Word. That is a broken combination, to be blunt. Having a character that basically gets a free healing word every single turn is pretty bad. And that goes for... and the reason that works is Healing Word is a bonus action, whereas... Healing Word is a bonus action where a lot of other spells are action spells. This allows you to kind of do both, which again is a bit intense, to say the least. So yeah, it's, again, I understand the thought process behind it, but when you look at the base class, the base class wants to be using sneak attack, so it wants to be attacking. So that'll build up your charges, but then you can't really cast spells because you're not attacking and you won't be using your charges. And then, well, if you have bonus action spells, which there are a few of them, you can use those spells and still be using that. Like, it turns into this really complicated mess. Yeah. Going forward, at 11th level, you get Improvised Flow. When you make a concentration check, you may spend a dazzling dance charge to roll with advantage. That's really useful when you're concentrating. Now, concentrating on a spell as a dancer is rough. Dancers, most races have a base speed of 30 feet. A dancer that is concentrating has a base speed of 20 feet. Because they have to spend 10 feet to concentrate on the spell. If they wanted to cast another spell while they're concentrating on a different spell, well, now they have to spend 10 feet to cast the spell. They have to spend 10 feet to concentrate on this spell. So their movement speed has gone from 30 feet to 10 feet if they are making the most out of this subclass. So the dancer, which is based on movement, is very quickly becoming almost a stationary turret if they're doing any sort of concentration spells. It'll get even better in a second here. So when you're concentrating, you can burn a dazzling dance charge so that you don't lose concentration. But to be perfectly honest, losing concentration might be useful for you because you'd get 10 feet of speed back, which would be nice. Um, so yeah, it makes sense. Like it's a useful thing. There are so many other things to use your charges on. I don't see that ever being useful, especially since just by taking the War Wizard feat, I think is what it's called, you get advantage on concentration checks anyways. So there's already a way to get that. So yeah. Again, it kind of makes sense, but it's not really that useful, and you're kind of handicapping yourself anytime you use it because you won't be able to use those dazzling dance charges to cast spells or inspire people, which is what everything else in this subclass does. So, finally, at 15th level, you get Forte Fusion. And if anyone is actually looking at the class, they're like, wait a minute, it says Fort Fusion. Well, that's because music is written in Italian for some odd reason. I think it has something to do with the fact that Italian was considered a better language during, like a fancier language during the classical period of music. So things like Mozart. Mozart, lots of people know who Mozart was. He was an incredibly famous composer. Even in his time, he was incredibly famous and died penniless because fame did not translate into money but back then. But Mozart actually pissed off some of the music community back then because he wrote some of his operas in German, because Mozart was German, and he was in Vienna, if I remember correctly, where a lot of people speak German. And so he wrote some of his operas in German, which was considered a guttural language at the time. So the reason I'm mentioning this is Forte is Italian for, I believe it's Italian for loud. I know in music, Forte is what they write in the music when they want you to play loud. And there's different levels of loud. The the volume goes from, you'll see either a little P or a little F. And P means piano, which means soft, and F means forte, which means loud. And then there's various stages. You can have two of them, and that's pianissimo. That's very, very soft. And then you can have three of them, that's pianissimissimo, which is really, 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 really soft. Then you have piano, and then you have MP, mezzo piano. Then you have MF, mezzo forte, which is a little bit louder. Then you have F, forte. And then you have double F, fortissimo. So yes, welcome to the world of music. So forte, it's spelled Forte, and in Italian, that's pronounced forte. And sorry, it's music. That's what I spent 20 years playing and singing music. I learned music theory when I was in high school, and I used to write it. So forgive me when I get to talk about it. Anyway, so Forte Fusion. You have learned how to mix known dances. You are able to cast a second spell which requires concentration without ending the first. To do so, you use your action to spend one dazzling dance charge to cast the second spell alongside the required spell slot. Each turn you concentrate on the second spell, you must use your action to spend one dazzling dance charge and spend 10 feet of movement per spell. So, this actually technically breaks one of the kind of defining features of 5th edition, which is concentration. Concentration is the big limiting factor on spell casting to prevent really powerful spells from overlapping and just becoming super, super broken. If I remember correctly, there is another subclass that I think Mercer might have put it out in one of his Critical Role Tal'Dorei books. I can't remember exactly, but I remember doing a D&D deep dive where I talked about a class having the ability to cast multiple concentration spells at once, and it really does open up the world for some massively broken things. But if it's built into the class correctly, it can just be a really interesting, cool feature. For this, okay, so the way that Forte Fusion works is you first have to have a spell that you're already concentrating on. It's 10 feet of movement. Then you have to use your action and spend a Dazzling Dance charge to cast a second spell, which if that second spell requires, has verbal components, you now have to spend another 10 feet of movement in order to do that. So now you have just used 20 feet of movement to have that. When it comes around again, the next turn, you have to use your action, meaning you can't use, it's not sneak attack, what do they call it? Flourish. Can't use flourish. You can't build any more dazzling dance charges, because those require either taking the attack action or casting a spell not using them. So you can't do that. You have to use your action and spend another Dazzling Dance charge, which at this point you're probably going to have a significantly difficult time building up charges, because there's so many things that require you to use the charges, and you have to spend 10 feet of movement per spell. So while you are concentrating on two spells, you cannot take an action, you can't move more than 10 feet, and you are constantly burning Dazzling Dance charges without the ability to replenish them. So as much as this sounds like a really cool thing, it would probably last for a single turn before you would run out of Dazzling Dance charges. And you would have to set it up really, really well. So having a single turn where you can concentrate on two different spells, if it's the right turn and the right spells, could be devastating. But it requires so much planning that could very easily be interrupted by the enemy just doing something like counterspelling you, or attacking you and forcing you to make concentration checks and losing concentration on both of them while still wasting all that movement into the things like that. Like the whole thing that you have to use movement to cast spells really, really handicaps this class to an extreme degree. And this subclass kind of shows that. This dancer can't move more than 10 feet per turn. A character that is wearing heavy armor and is not proficient in it is faster than a dancer because of how spellcasting works. So yeah, that's the class, or the subclass. Like I said, I'm not a fan of the spellcasting in general for this particular class, because it doesn't make sense, and combined with everything else, it really doesn't make sense. So yeah, final thoughts: throw the class away, or the subclass away. Now, if we were to make this work with the new version, where it uses Dazzling Dance charges and has the partner ability, I think sticking with the movement aspect could still be really interesting and fun. So at third level, I had this all planned out, and I have to remember who you are. Sorry, every time I hear the word remember, the only thing I can think of is The Lion King, and the ghost of Mufasa in the clouds going, "You are my son, and the one true king. Remember who you are." God, James Earl Jones is amazing. Anyway, so this is my idea. For their third level ability, we can still call it Inspiring Salsa, though it might not make as much sense. I will leave it up to Soren or whoever decides to take this to come up with a better name for this, because my brain still isn't working. But basically, as a bonus action, you can throw your chakram or whatever thrown weapon you have, because you're going to be using thrown weapons for world. What was it called? Where'd you go? Whirling Steel. You can target an ally within the long range of your weapon. They will catch it, and then you will pull them towards you up to... I have to remember how I phrased this. Up to half your walking speed. So for a character with the 30 feet of movement, you... Okay, no, this is how I did it. All right, so when you take the dash action, or when you spend a Dazzling Dance to charge to use the dash action, at the end of your dash, you can target an ally within the long range of your weapon and throw your chakram at them. They'll catch it, and you can pull them up to half your movement speed. Otherwise, if you don't use the dash action, you can use your bonus action to just throw it and pull them your full movement speed towards you. So this really leans into the hypermobility of the class itself. By allowing it to tie into the dash action that you can use as your bonus action, it means that you can really position yourself where you want to be able to move your ally to exactly where they want to be. And there's a lot of different uses for this. First things first, forced movement breaks grapples and restrained and things like that. So if one of your allies is grappled or restrained, you can go over and throw it at them and pull them out of the grapple. If you have someone that is near enemies that doesn't want to be, you can pull them away. If you have someone that uses the charger feat, which too many people never use it, and it's a cool feat, you can pull them away, so on their turn, they can charge in again and get that extra damage or the knockdown, whatever they want to do with that. So being able to effectively reposition your team has a lot of different uses. The other thing I will make mention is there should be a note in there is while they are moving like this, they are considered flying and won't set off any ground-based traps or issues like that. So if there's lava in between you, you're not dragging them through lava, or if there's thorn spike growth there, you're not dragging them through the spikes. They're literally holding on and being pulled through the air really quickly. So yeah, I think that fits with the movement thing. It allows the dancer to be hyper mobile. It allows them to leave their action for attacking. Again, anytime they burn a Dazzling Dance to charge, their dance partner is going to get advantage on their first attack against someone they've attacked. So this just really kind of opens up a lot of options for the dancer to just kind of literally dance around the outside of combat and pull your allies to exactly where they want to be. So that's what I would say for the 3rd level ability. At 6th level, I'm Magic of Movement. Doesn't even need a name change. And it's simply going to be your movement speed increases by 10 feet. So if it was 30, it is now 40. The reason I choose 10 feet is because we're already cutting movement in half. If you use the dash action, you don't want to leave them halfway between a square. On a grid, which to use this particular class really well, it will probably be very, very useful to kind of run around on a grid instead of doing Theater of the Mind, just because it makes it easier to see where enemies are positioned. But On a grid, most grids are 5-foot squares. So increasing it by 10 feet means they now can pull someone 20 feet instead of 15, or 40 feet instead of 30 feet. And again, it just adds on to that hyper mobility that the class is built around, and can be a lot of fun. And again, that extra 10 feet is going to give them so many more things that they can do, and then that key that they can go around and things like that. So yeah, it'll really make for a fun, interesting character. Going to 11th level, the Improvised Flow. I have to remember how it was that I did this. Because for 11th and 15th level, I had two things, and I should have written them down because that would have been the smart thing to do. But obviously, I'm not very, very smart. Oh, that's what 11th level was. So, the base feature of Dazzling Dance is you can take either the dash or the disengage action as a bonus action. Disengage just means you don't provoke opportunity attacks. So, for 11th level, whenever you use a Dazzling Dance charge to use the dash action, you also use the disengage action. So now, anytime they use that dash action, which is built upon in the 3rd level of ability, where they can now drag allies around, they also don't provoke opportunity attacks for the rest of that turn. And because you can use your dash action first, that can mean, or you can use your bonus action before you use your action, your movement. That can mean for the entire turn they don't provoke opportunity attacks, which is really nice for them because that means they can go exactly where they want to drag the ally exactly where they want the ally to be. Now, the 3rd level of ability does state at the end of the dash action is when the pull happens. So if you use it first, that would mean you would dash, which lets you move your full movement speed, pull someone, and then you would still have movement to move around again, which might be exactly what you will want, because you can literally run into a group of enemies, pull your paladin in there or your barbarian in, and then run out without anyone being able to touch you, and bop a couple people on the way out. Like, there's a lot of different uses for that, and again, it builds on a core feature and allows you to do more with it. I like it. I think it's interesting. So yeah, that would be whatever name you want to give to Improvised Flow. And then finally, the 15th level ability, and this is where I think things get really cool. When an ally is pulled by your Inspiring Salsa, or whatever you could call it, if they enter... if they are within weapons range of an enemy at any point during the movement, including the beginning and the end, they can use their reaction to make an opportunity attack against a creature that is within range of the enemy. Effectively, anytime you use the Inspiring Salsa move ability, you can grant an opportunity attack, basically an attack, to someone else. We've talked about this before, especially with Flourish being effectively sneak attack. Sneak attack happens once per turn, not per round. So if a rogue can get a chance to sneak attack, or if a rogue can get a chance to attack on someone else's turn using their reaction, they can get their sneak attack again. Other things like paladins, anytime they get a chance to make another attack, that's another chance for a smite. Monks, every additional attack is another chance to stun. Like, being able to give out an attack to anyone that they get pulled around is a really, really useful thing. It does mean that the dancer needs to be very aware of the battlefield to know where it's going to be most effective to pull them. And it might mean moving first and then using just the bonus action without the dash so they could pull them. Or it might mean dashing, moving and then dashing so you can get to the exact right place to pull them. The other thing with Forte Fusion, or whatever they decide to call it, is I guess in the first one we should mention you cannot pull allies through enemies. You can pull them past them, but you can't pull them through their space. To give it some limitation. Well, at 15th level with Forte Fusion, you can pull them through enemies' spaces. However, any enemy that they move through, they have to use their reaction to it to attack. So that's the only limitation to that. But yeah, it definitely turns into a very, very interesting class or subclass at that point, because again, it's really, really focused on the hyper movement aspect of the class. Combining the additional movement with the fact that their dance partner is going to just constantly be getting advantage on attack rolls against thing, and effectively all of their dazzling dance charge abilities are bonus actions, so their action is always left open to be able to attack, so that their dance partner is always going to get a benefit, even if they're not benefiting from the other things they can use their charges for. So yeah, so that's what I think, and that's my ideas. That is going to be all for me today. As always, if you enjoyed this, again, like, subscribe, turn notifications on in the comments down below. First things first, what do you think about kind of the redesign of the class? Do you like the hyper movement focused version of this, or do you prefer the magic version? And you would prefer this to basically kind of be like a Eldritch Knights or I can't think of any of the third caster classes, basically subclasses that add magic to a class that didn't have them already. Would you prefer to see something like that for this class instead? Let me know those in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, that's all from me today, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, bye bye.